Okay, in this lab, we're going to be talking about homologies. Homologies are structures that have the same origin, but not necessarily the same function in the environment. And if you look around the room, these are all vertebrates, and vertebrates have a backbone, and they have an internal skeleton, and they are all part of the group Chordata. That means that they have the same origin. That's one of the reasons, or one of the ways that we know they have the same origin is the fact that most of them have the same exact bones that we have as humans. Now humans, especially in our forelimb, that is our arm, we are considered generalists. That is, we don't do anything particularly special with the limb. Except for our opposable thumb. That means that we can grab things. Other than that, it's fairly even in terms of the bone structure and size. So we're going to use this forelimb to compare to some of the other organisms and their forelimb. So we're going to just go over the different bones very quickly. The different bones are, there's 3 phalanges. Those are the ones that are making up the joints of your fingers. So you have 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. All right, then the next part is the metacarpals. The metacarpals are the things that are inside of your hands. Then you have the carpals, which are all these little bones here. There's about, I think there's 12 or 13 of them, something like that. That enables you to rotate your wrists. Then you have these 2 bones here. The top one is called the radius, and the bottom one is the ulna. The ulna is like where your funny bone would be. The top one is the one that rotates, which is why it is called the radius, right? And this is called the humerus. Other features of the skeleton that I'll just kind of briefly go over are the clavicle and the sternum, of course, you know, the ribs, and then also the scapula, right? So those are some things that we will be looking at. So we're going to be looking first at the cat skeleton here. I'm just to move it out just a little bit so you can kind of see a little better. If you look at the forelimb here, you can see that all of the same bones are present. So if I were to start at the tippy toes, I could count 1, 2, 3 phalanges, and then I would see that these bones that are sticking up there, those would be the metacarpals, and then the carpals in the wrist. That would make the top bone here, the radius, ulna in the back, humerus, and then the scapula. Okay? Notice that they do not have a clavicle. All right? Now this has to do with animals that are walking forward. So when you walk forward like this, you don't need a clavicle because clavicles are to support muscles that let you go to the outside. All right. Notice also that on the cat that it is walking on its tippy toes. All right. And later on we'll talk a little bit more about that. But it's a different way of walking. So what do you think that allows the cat to do? The cat, of course, is very agile on its feet, can land very softly, and walk very, very predator-like. That is, they can sneak up on things. All right. The bat, this is a fruit bat. They're huge. They're beautiful if you ever see them in person. They're really neat. But this one also has the same bones, but a different structure, or that is a different configuration for the environment because they're using it for flying. All right. So these are the phalanges, 1, 2, 3. Notice how long they are, and they are going to be supporting the main part or the outer part of the bat wing. Up here are the carpals and metacarpals fused. And that enables, first of all, the bones to be reduced in terms of the amount of bone that is present, but also for the a little bit of strength in that top part of the wing. And then this part, this long bone right here, notice if you look very closely, you can see that the radius and the ulna are fused. Again, adding to the stability of that. In other words, it's fused both of those bones together, but they're long and skinny, so it keeps the weight light. So again, because of flight, it needs to be light. This one, Right here is the humerus. The humerus would be inside, very close to the bat body. So the main part of the wing is then supported by the radius, ulna, and the finger. So that would be this from my elbow out, and then the humerus would be a little bit more internal. Another thing to note about the bat is they have fairly big scapula. The scapula support the wings because in a bat they fly all the way back. So their wings go all the way up and all the way down. So they have to have strong muscles in the front and strong muscles in the back. So the scapula are fairly large compared to the body size. Also, the sternum right here is sticking out to support the muscles in the front for flying. So it's pretty much built up for flying. Notice also has a clavicle. Again, that's because it can open its arms, wings out, right? So this outward motion. So, and comparing the human forelimb with the horse forelimb, you can see down here, this is 1, 2, 3 phalanges. Now, in this case, what the horse skeleton does is it fuses the phalanges together. In other words, instead of having 4 separate phalanges, like these 4 are part of the fingers, they are fused together, and that makes a structure that the hoof can be on. And this allows the horse to be very strong and stable and enables it to hold a big body weight and to run fast. Notice that these 3 joints then are the phalanges. What would you think that these things are? This would be the metacarpals, okay? And then the carpals up here. This is a remnant of the actual thumb back here, this part. Then you have the radius and ulna fused. And you can see fairly clearly the ulna fusion with the radius, again, for stability or strength. And in this case, it's a very big bone as opposed to a very thin bone like the bat for flying. This is very thick, supporting the big body weight. Notice this part right here, this would be, it's the forelimb, right? We would normally call this the knee of the horse, but which way would but it's actually literally like the wrist, right? Because you've got the phalanges and then the metacarpals, which are this part. So that part, what we call the knee, is actually the wrist, all right? So that's why it bends forward. You might think it should bend backwards, but it doesn't, okay? And then this part, the humerus, is inside the body. This would be like the shoulder of the horse. And then the scapula are huge, again, for supporting huge muscles to support that big body weight.